What's going on, everybody? Isaac here with Civil Engineering Academy, coming at you with another fun podcast episode. Today, I actually bring my brother Mark Okeson back on. I know I'm always bringing him back on, but he's a great resource, and I'll continue to have him on in the future, I am sure. So Mark is, he helped create the course of the Ultimate Civil FE Review course. And he's helped to contribute a lot to Civil Engineering Academy. So he's fun to bring on, talk about some of his experiences. And today we actually dive into a topic that we can all use, and that's how to really focus. And really what it means, that it's an actual skill that you need to practice, how to really get into a state of deep work and be able to practice this mindfulness. And so we talk about this, how it affects our studies, how it affects our workplace, and really what we can do to practice this as a skill in our life. So it's a really neat thing, something we can all focus on. So I invite you to focus on this podcast to check it out. So it's going to be a good one, and it's be coming right up. All right. Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm excited to be here with you on another fun podcast episode. I've got Mark with me today. How's it going, Mark?
Hey, everybody. It's going great. Glad to be here again.
Yes, I'm glad you're here too. So today we wanted to talk about maintaining focus and being able to sustain that, because there's so much taking our attention away in today's world. And so it gets really hard to actually focus on stuff, including your studies, whether you're studying for the FE exam, you're studying for the PE exam, or even when you're at work and you've got a million things open and you've got your phone blaring at you and blinking at you, all of that fun stuff.
Yeah, it can get tough. Pay attention.
Yeah, we don't like that. So it gets kind of nasty out there. So today we wanted to talk about how to maintain focus. And really, if you can maintain focus, not only are you going to have a more productive day, but I think results for whatever you're trying to do are going to go up. So
yes, to be effective, you have to learn how to focus. So
Mark, take us through. I mean, this was a topic that we kind of thought about. Why did it pop up in your mind to talk about this? What was kind of the background? How did we get
here? Because I struggle with this every single day. It's something that I have a set list of tasks that I have prioritized that I need to accomplish during a day. And I get interrupted just constantly all day long. And it's stuff that pops up that requires my attention, stuff that maybe is happening on a job site that requires my experience or expertise, to lend my opinion on what ought to be done to handle the situation. Those things happen all day long, but that distracts me from my mainline items that I need to get done for the day, so that I can remain productive. And so I have to prioritize those things, right? I have to. Usually, my phone's ringing all day long, but I have to prioritize what's important and what's not, so I can remain focused. So. It's just something that I deal with all day long, and it's something that I continually strive to do is retain focus on what I'm trying to do at work, and it's a challenge. And I bet there's a lot of people that have the same challenge I do. So I thought this would be something good to talk about.
So I guess what that leads to in my mind is, if we're going to try to do anything well and we have to be able to pay attention to it, how do we decide? I mean, some of those things automatically come up, like what do we need to prioritize? What do we need to pay attention to?
Well, that is up to you and how you prioritize your work. So obviously everybody has deadlines. Everybody has I would say those tasks that are a priority in you meeting your goals in your position as an engineer. There's some main things that have to get done. For example, in my career, I I do a lot of team building and design assist type things. And when I'm involved with designers that are trying to pursue the best course of action to most economically design a structure, and I'm lending my opinions and my expertise to that, I have to get that done, and it has to be in a timely fashion. I have to meet a deadline, and that takes some focus, right, to get all that done. And so I have to prioritize that sometimes. Sometimes those tasks take just one day of really good focus, and I just kind of have to block everything else out. Sometimes it's just a few hours, but with our cell phones and emails and things constantly vying for our attention, even other colleagues within your office building or within your office, it can distract you from that deep concentration that you need to maintain to get those important tasks done. So really prioritizing is up to you, but the stuff that needs to be prioritized are those tasks that I call them mainline career kind of tasks that you're in charge of.
Yeah, I agree. It kind of reminds me, in this era of COVID, a lot of people are working from home. And some people have even said that they've been able to, while they're at home now, been able to focus more. It's kind of a mixed bag. I mean, if you have kids and stuff, some people are saying it's horrible to work home sometimes, but I've noticed people are working, sometimes they're working longer because, you don't have all the distractions of coworkers coming over to talk to you. You just wake up and you just start going to work, and all of a sudden the day's flying by. So I agree. Everybody's going to have their own individual tasks, and I think it requires a certain skill to be able to practice to paying attention to things.
Yes, I would agree with that.
I think it's really hard to multitask when you've got.
I think that's I think that's an impossible thing to do. You can't multitask. You can split your attention up, and you can focus on one thing for a really short duration and then move to another thing for a really short duration. But there really isn't such a thing as multitasking. You're really just splitting your attention up.
So how do we, I guess the question then is how do we practice this? How do we practice paying attention? How do we hone this as a skill that we can develop?
Well, that's a good question. You have to practice being in a state of deep focus. So if you can practice being sometimes this state of mind, sometimes it's called being mindful or mindfulness. And I think it's at the core of most, I would say, meditation programs. If anybody's ever gone through, serious meditation programs where they teach you how to be mindful, how to close your eyes and kind of be mindful of your heartbeat and the rhythm of your breath and the way your body is feeling and your environment around you, and just being in the moment. It's a good idea to practice those kind of things just for like 3, 4, 5 minutes at a time. Just practice being mindful and being able to calmly kind of block out any environmental distractions that may be going on, and just focus on your state of being, your state of mind, your heartbeat, your breath, your just the way you feel. If you can concentrate on that, just for a little bit, you'll be able to build your skills up on being mindful. And like I say, I think that's at the core of most meditation programs. If anybody's ever gone through something like that, that's what they teach you to do.
Yeah, and there's another a resource out there. I believe it's called Deep Work, where you get into a state where you're performing deep work, which is, you're not distracted by things. You're able to really create something or focus on what you need to check, or, QA, QC, or whatever it is. But that's by Cal Newport, and it is called Deep Work. But if you can get yourself in that kind of mindset, and I've noticed this when I was preparing for the PE exam, it might take practice, but eventually you get into a rhythm of practicing problems, and you do get yourself back into kind of those college days when you were studying for an exam and you'd have to really sit down and solve these problems. I consider that definitely deep work when you can set up your environment to do that.
Yeah, I enjoy. That's one of the things I enjoy about engineering is when I'm in that zone, and you're kind of you're confronted with a problem and you've got the skills to solve the problem, and you kind of know the sequence and how to get from point A to point B, and being in that zone where everything kind of comes together. I really enjoy being in that state of mind. It's one of the things I enjoy about engineering. Yeah,
it's kind of a flip that switches, and you need to start thinking, put your thinking cap on, and really solve a problem, or remember how to go look it up at least and go study how to solve it, something like that.
Right. So if you're somebody who's like generally distracted by your cell phone easily, or any little environmental situation that may distract you, if you're one of those people that gets just disrupted easily, then maybe that's something you ought to look at, is practicing that kind of meditation, that being able to be mindful in a way where you're kind of blocking everything out and just focusing on one thing. It's a good thing to practice.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess another thing that you could practice is just being like practicing being your best attention. Try to practice giving attention, whether that's to other people, paying attention to instead of focusing on other things going on, focusing on the words they're saying, paying attention to the details going on. Because there are sometimes, I swear, you could be talking to your boss and you're noticing some green thing in his teeth, and everything else is just going over your head. I don't know. So.
Yeah. No, be a good attention giver. It's so easily, especially when you're just in conversation with maybe a colleague or even anybody in your family. It's really easy to try to pay attention to what they're saying, and then you're distracted by a text or something, and your phone bling 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 bling.
Oh, my wife does not like me on the phone.
You're so tempted to look at that text and that email or that whatever that notification was on your phone, because you're distracted, and then you lose the train of conversation with that person. And I've done that with subordinates at my work, and it's not good. Because
and you're like, what's good?
Yeah, they'll be talking to me, and anyway. Then I can hear their voice kind of waning off, and I realize, oh no, I got to pay attention to this. Yeah. But it's usually during those times when, man, I've just got so many things coming at me, and I'm trying to multitask, right? And you just can't do it. So you gotta be a good attention giver, and just focus on that one thing at a time, and then go to the next one.
And everyone's just running 100 miles an hour. It's hard to do that. But like my wife, I get complained to that I'm on my phone a lot too. And if you have kids, they want your attention too.
Oh,
and so if you're on your phone a lot, that's not always the best thing to
do. Yep. So be your best attention giver. Right.
I've always been impressed by like artists that are able to sit down and can really paint a picture with so many details, or they capture a moment with like so many emotions in that painting or picture, that required a lot of attention to be able to do that. And it's the same thing with engineering when you're out there solving or doing your task or whatever. you get your mindset into that deep state of work, and you can do some good work too.
Yeah. You got to get into that creative zone. So be your best attention giver. We can talk about too, selecting your area of focus, right?
Sure.
So we kind of briefly mentioned this in setting your priorities, right? But that's, you can't focus on everything. So you got to choose what you're going to focus on throughout the day. You can't do everything at that deep level that we're talking about. So you got to pick what's most important so that you can, and then allocate enough time so you can get into that state of deep focus, and then block everything else out.
I've noticed with everyone at work had to upgrade to Microsoft Office or Outlook, whatever the latest Outlook is. And I'm noticing now, when everything has been uploaded to the cloud now, that Microsoft is sending specific reports now on like analytics of how much email you get, how many meetings you have. And if you actually like click on these links and you read their analytics they set up, they now will block out time for you, and they call it focus time, because I think they understand, that people aren't able to do work unless you can block out time to do stuff. So
exactly.
I thought that was kind of interesting with this Microsoft updates, that they're really diving into the analytics of your emails, and they know how many meetings you have and where your free time is and all that. So
well, that's probably a good thing. That's interesting.
Anyway, I think there's tons of books and resources out there on how to focus your attention. You mentioned, prioritizing your tasks, and I think we've mentioned mentioning Stephen Covey's the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, where he details, the rock scenario where they put they always display all those, you have sand and the gradient of rocks goes up, and they ask people to put it all in a jar, and people that put in the sand first never are able to fill it. And so you have to do it reverse. You do with your big tasks first, you put in the big rocks, and then you can fill it in with the little stuff.
Right. Yeah, that's a good visual.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, and the bottom line is, losing your focus, it's just not a personal issue, but it can cost the company that you work for, the firm that you work for. It's got costs associated with it, right?
Yeah.
And if you're constantly starting like new projects and you're really enthusiastic and going after them, and then you're hit with another project that you got to focus on, then what happens to that first project? Does it ever get done? And then you're on the second project. Well, maybe you get a hit with a third one, does the second or the first one get done? It's, it can get crazy and things can pile on, but you got to focus on one thing at a time and get it done. And it might be that the first project that you're working on, maybe that gets a back seat. Maybe it's not as important as the second project, but you got to be able to focus on one thing at a time, complete it, then go on to the next one. If you just keep letting things pile on, you may never get anything done. And that's costly for your organization.
I think if you bring up a good point there, I specifically remember in interviews that I've had for positions and the position I have now, that was one of the questions that they asked and that we asked candidates is, how would you manage multiple projects at one time, and how do you determine what's a priority or not? And I think the point of that question is just to try to figure out how they prioritize things, what they focus on, and kind of get their response on how do they deal with a large workload. How do they manage stress like that? I don't know if you've ever been asked questions like that, or if asked those kind of questions.
Yeah,
it's kind of an interesting one.
I've been asked those questions. Yeah.
So
can't say that I've been the one asking that one, but I have been asked that question.
So, if you're listening to this and, there is a potential job interview out there, those kind of questions do creep up where they like to ask you how you handle multiple projects at one time and how you're going to tackle that and focus on doing those. So,
yeah.
Anyway,
I'd say if we were to walk away from this, that the big takeaways here is determining what your strengths are. Practice being mindful, right? Practice meditating and being in that mindful state of mind. Make sure that you're allocating some times where you can be deeply focused on the task at hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you've prioritized, make sure you're allocating time for that. And it's not 100% of the time, because you do have to deal with the emails and all the other stuff that's constantly interrupting you. But make sure you're allocating some time that you can do that deep focus and get those prioritized tasks done.
I agree.
I think that's the big takeaway here.
Good deal. Well, everyone needs to learn how to focus a little better out there to pay attention on tasks at hand. So hopefully this was valuable to people. We'll list some of the resources we talked about in our show notes. Mark, anything else you want to touch on being able to keep your focus and maintain it?
No, I just say that, practice. If you're having a hard time with it, then practice. There's a bunch of resources for meditation that you can, apps that you can download. There's a bunch of resources that way. If that's what you need to do to, practice being mindful, then do it.
So go home tonight and turn on your favorite sports show. And then when your wife's talking, practice giving her all the attention in the world. That's what you need to go do. That's how to get
Isaac's getting a little autobiographical here.
I'm just kidding. But you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. Anyway. Yep.
Well, yeah, good points. Good topic of discussion. Definitely some things we can all work on and practice. And it trickles into job interviews and everything else. This will trickle into your studies for FEPE and everything else that's going on. So definitely a good topic. So thanks, Mark, for joining me today. And we'll see you in another one, I'm sure.
Okay.
All right. Bye.